Hello, I'm Michael Topham, technical writer for digital photo, and welcome to this month's second masterclass video lesson that's focusing on Photoshop's vanishing point filter. In the first video, we took a look at it with some very simple documents and explored how it can be used to add images to different perspective planes. Towards the end of the video, we also experimented with the stamp tool to see how we can clone whilst retaining the perspective of a shape. In this video, we're going to move on and see how the vanishing point filter can be used even more creatively. The image that we're going to be working on can be found in the Start Images folder on the DPCD, and it's named jetty.jpg. Taking a look at the image, it's got a strong composition, and I like the way the trees are reflecting in the calming waters. The fisherman's jetty in the foreground offers something to lead the eye into the image, but what I really want to do is I want to extend this jetty so the eye is being led into the centre of the lake. This isn't an easy job that can be done with any of the cloning or healing tools in the toolbox, and because we're going to be dealing with perspective, it's a really good idea and good opportunity for us to use Photoshop's vanishing point filter. Once you've loaded up the file jetty.jpg into Photoshop, make sure that you can see your layers palette, and then go up to layer in the menu bar and then go down and click on duplicate layer. Give this duplicate layer the name Jetty Extension and then go across, hit OK, and you'll see that new layer in your layers palette. You can now load up the vanishing point filter very quickly by hitting its shortcut Alt plus Control plus V, or equally we can go up to filter in the menu bar and then go down and click on vanishing point. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a plane just like we did in the first video, and we're going to be creating a plane of this jetty. But before we create a plane, it's very important that we zoom in to make sure that our perspective plane is as accurate as it can be. So go over to the left and select the zoom tool and then click on the image a couple of times and zoom into the jetty, and then use the hand tool to make sure that it's positioned nice and centrally on your screen. Go back over to the left and scroll back up through the vertical arrangement of tools and select the Create Plane tool. And then we need to select the grid size and just decrease the grid size down to a value of around 30. You're looking to make one of your first corner points down towards the bottom left of the jetty. So very carefully make your first point and then work your way along the left edge of the jetty. Then I'm just going to make my next point about there, and then move across to the other side about there, and then move down the right hand side of the jetty, and I'm just going to join up my plane, and I'm just going to click about there, and you should be able to see that you've now got your grid showing on your screen. If you're not entirely happy with your perspective plane, go over to the left and select the Edit Plane tool, and then you can use this just to move around these different control points. It's quite a good idea just to inspect your perspective plane, so go over to the left again and select the Zoom tool, and I'm just going to zoom in and just check my plane is looking just as it should be. I'm just going to click back on the Edit Plane tool there. I'm just going to move this out a little bit and move it back in. That's looking quite good. We can see the plane there is following the side of the jetty. I'm just going to hold down the space bar to move through the image. I'm just going to check the plane on the other side. And I think that's all looking rather good. I'm quite happy with that. And when you've done that, once you've checked your perspective plane, you can zoom back out slightly by hitting Ctrl and minus. Hold down the space bar and just move the jetty a little bit further down. And once you've done that, check that you're selected on the Edit Plane tool over on the left, and then take hold of the top central control point and just stretch this out so the plane extends into the centre of the lake. We can now see that the grid is actually quite small, so move back up to the top and just take hold of the grid size slider and drag this over to the right and settle for a value of around 100. So now that we've created our perspective plane in the vanishing point filter and we've adjusted it, we can go over to the left and set up the stamp tool. So just click on it, and we're going to adjust the diameter and the hardness sliders. Click on the small downwards arrow next to the diameter and increase the diameter up to around 400. Once you've done that, move across and then just click on the small downwards arrow for the hardness, and we're going to go for a hardness value of around 50. It's also worth checking that the opacity is set to 100, the heel is turned off, and the aligned box is ticked. Next, zoom into the image by hitting Ctrl and plus a couple of times, and then hold down on the spacebar and just move down towards the bottom left of the jetty. Move your cursor inside the perspective plane and then hold down the Alt key and you'll see how the cursor changes. We're looking to make our source point for the clone. So I'm just holding down with the Alt key and I'm just going to move over towards the left and I'm just going to make my source point right on the edge of the perspective plane, just about there. Move the cursor up the left hand side of the jetty and you'll notice how the stamp tool now has the wooden planks of the jetty attached to it. Carefully align the stamp tool on the left edge of the jetty and then brush over to the right to add another line of wooden jetty planks. So I'm just carefully just brushing that across over towards the right hand side like so, and then very carefully just brushing a little bit further up and then just brushing back over towards the left hand side. We can now take another source point for the clone, and we can do that by holding down the Alt key. I'm just going to take my source point just about here, I think, so I'm just going to carefully position it over on the far left, hold down once with my mouse, so I've taken the source point. I'm just going to move my cursor up the left edge of the jetty and carefully position it again. I think that's all looking quite good. I'm just going to carefully just brush over, and we can see how we're just painting a few more pixels into the image, and we're kind of maintaining the perspective of the jetty, and that's all starting to look very, very good. As you work your way up, don't forget to take source points as you go. As we can see, I'm working through the image quite well, but I'm just going to take one more source point over on the left, so I'm just going to hold down with the Alt key once more, and then I'm just going to add a few more pixels. I'm just going to carefully brush those across to the right. I'm really happy with that cloning. I think that looks really quite smart. If at any stage you're not happy with your cloning and you want to take a step back, you can do very easily. Just hit Ctrl and Z and that will take you a step back, and then you can try again. When you're happy that you've successfully extended the jetty, you can zoom out very easily by hitting Ctrl and 0. It's worth giving the jetty a final check over, and when you're ready to apply your cloning work, you can move up and hit OK. So now that we've successfully extended the jetty using the vanishing point filter, we now need to just tidy it up at the end and make it look a little bit smarter. Move into the layers palette and turn off the jetty extension layer for the time being, and then zoom in to the jetty by hitting Ctrl and plus a few times. Move over into the toolbox and pick out the polygonal lasso tool, and then go into the options bar and then make sure you've got new selection selected and go for a feather of around 2 pixels. Use the polygonal lasso tool to make a selection around these retaining planks at the end of the jetty. So just carefully work your way around, take your time, take as much care and time as you need, and when you get back to where you started, you'll be able to see the marching ants appear on your screen. And then when they do, you can go up to Edit in the menu bar and then down to Copy Merged. To deselect the marching ants, we can go up to Select and down to Deselect, but it's a better idea to use the shortcut, which is Ctrl and D. Zoom out slightly by hitting Ctrl and minus a couple of times, and then go into your layers palette again, and this time turn back on your jetty extension layer by clicking on the Eye Layer Visibility icon. If we now hit the shortcut Ctrl and V, this will paste in the retaining jetty planks. But we can see they're a little bit large in the frame at the moment, so I'm going to go into the toolbox and select the Move tool, and then I'm making sure I'm selected on layer 1 in the layers palette. I'm going to hit Ctrl and T, which enters free transform mode. Hold down Shift on your keyboard to constrain the proportions, and then just drag in one of the corner handles just to make this a little bit smaller. You can then just hold down inside just start to position it where it's going to end up, and that's starting to look quite good. And you can also zoom in just to get a better idea of how it's looking by hitting Ctrl and plus. When you've successfully positioned the retaining jetty planks at the end of the jetty, you can hit enter just to apply that free transform. But we can see at the moment over on the left that the plank is just heading out into the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint back some of those pixels of the water in the lake. And we can do that by adding a layer mask to layer 1 in the layers palette. Make sure that you've got layer 1 selected, and then go down towards the bottom of the layers palette and click on the add layer mask icon. This will bolt a layer mask alongside your layer thumbnail. Move across into the toolbox and check that your foreground colour is set to black, and then select the brush tool. Moving into the options bar, set up a soft brush with a master diameter size of around 50 pixels. Moving across in the options bar, set the mode to normal and the opacity to 100% and the flow to also 100%, and then zoom into the image slightly and move through by holding down on the space bar so you can see that plank that's just stretching out into the water. You can then just carefully brush over it just to return those pixels behind it. And as you get a little bit closer to the edge, it's quite a good idea just to downsize the brush. And you can do that by hitting the left square bracket key and just carefully brush away that plank there, just so you've got a nice smart bit of cloning. And that's looking a lot better already. You might have noticed that there's some horizontal wooden planks appearing above our wooden retaining plank. And it's very important to remove these if we want to get a realistic result. Move back into your layers palette and select your jetty extension layer, and then go down towards the bottom and click on the add layer mask icon. Use the same brush that you used previously, making sure that your foreground colour is still set to black, and then just move through the image very carefully, and you're just looking to remove those planks above the retaining plank. Take a bit of time and care with your cloning. There's no need to rush it, and just move through the image by holding down on the spacebar, which enters the hand tool. We can see there that we're just starting to remove those jetty planks above the retaining plank, and that's starting to look a lot better. Zoom back out by hitting Ctrl and 0. So we can see that our jetty image is really starting to come on leaps and bounds. But there's one final thing that I want to do. We're just going to add this jetty support up at the end there, just to make it look a little bit better and a little bit neater. So if you can see this jetty support in the image here, I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste another one up at the end here. So what you need to do is you need to zoom in nice and close on this jetty support and make sure that you've got your jetty extension layer selected in the layers palette. Move across into the toolbox and hold down on the polygonal lasso tool that we used earlier, and this time select the lasso tool. Check that it's also selected to a new selection in the options bar and the feather is set to 0 pixels. And then you can carefully use this tool, just make a careful selection around this jetty support. When the marching ants are showing, you can go up to edit in the menu bar, go down to copy merged, and then hit Ctrl and V to paste it back in. And you should be able to see that layer 2 is now visible in the layers palette, and it's best just to move that to the top of the stack. Zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole of your jetty, and then go across into the toolbox and select the move tool, and then just move this jetty support up through the image, and we're looking to position it up towards the top of the jetty about there. So I'm just going to zoom back in again, just carefully position it in place. At the moment it's looking a little bit large, so I'm going to hit Ctrl and T to enter free transform mode, hold down Shift to constrain the proportion, and just make it a little bit smaller. And that's starting to look really good. And I'm just going to tap it into position using my cursor keys. When you're happy with the positioning of your jetty support up at the end of the pier, you can just hit enter to apply the transformation, and then hit Ctrl and 0 to zoom back out again. With all of the hard cloning work complete, it's well worth going into the layers palette and then turning off the 3 layers that we've created, and we can see the image before we started. Turn these layers back on, and we can see how we've successfully extended the jetty, and the image is looking all the better for it. To finish off, we can flatten the image by going up to Layer in the menu bar, and then going down to Flatten Image. I'm going to save my file with a new file name by going up to File and then down to Save As. I've given my final image the name jettyextended.jpg. I'm just going to go across and click on Save. So now that we've seen how we can use the vanishing point filter to enhance an image, why not give it a try with some of your own shots? It's a really handy filter to know about, and you never quite know when you're going to need it next, so it's well worth learning how to use. I hope you've enjoyed this vanishing point video, and I look forward to bringing you another video very soon. Bye for now.